All right, MMA Today for tomorrow. We're back with UFC 220 preview going down in Boston. MMA King, his homeland, his home country.
Land.
So, what do we start with, man? You can tell us, where do we start?
Oh, I mean, looking at the card from top to bottom, there's only one place to start, which is, if we're talking about the best thing on the card, how can you pick against that main event? I mean, that is UFC 220. That's why everybody's tuning in. Just a phenomenal fight. But to build up some, anticipation, we can't just go with the good stuff first. So I think we should kind of start towards the bottom. The prelims are pretty weak. I'm not going to lie. There's a lot of good matchups, but they shouldn't be as high up on the card as they are. You could argue every single one of the prelims should be on Fight Pass. There's no really like wow prelim that's a great matchup. Maybe Dustin Ortiz and Pantoja would be a FS1 worthy prelim. But I think they're all good matchups. There's a few that stick out to me. There's a handful of Contender Series guys making their debut. Brandon Davis is in the FS1 headliner. He had probably the best fight of the season on Contender Series against Austin Arnett. Then you got two Contender Series guys squaring off against each other. Dan Ige, Julio Arce. That's going to be a good fight. Then the last one was actually somebody who lost in the Contender Series. Matt Bissett, guy that's just absolutely torn it up in my neck of the woods for as long as I can remember. He's been a pro in New England for 11 years. Finally getting the call to the big show. A day after he posted that his fight next month was going to be his retirement fight at CES 48. So that's just a phenomenal story. It's a great MMA story. It's not just a local story for here. It's the guy finally getting to live out his dreams, after putting in so much hard work. So that's kind of what my highlights of the prelims are. I don't know if Max has anything specific he wants to point out.
Yeah, Contender Series, a lot of eyes on those guys. I was a little disappointed to see that Arnold Allen was forced out with visa issues. He's a very bright young prospect in the featherweight division, now training at TriStar in Montreal. So that was a little disappointing, and I think that Enrique Barzola matchup was quite intriguing too. The one prelim that actually stands out to me is one that Nolan did not mention, and that is the Islam Makhachev against Gleison Tebow matchup. Makhachev, a guy who's known for training with Khabib Nurmagomedov, has absolutely rolled through the lightweight division with the exception of the knockout loss he had to Adriano Martins. Has been on an absolute tear. Ran through Nick Lentz, ran through Chris Wade, and now he faces Gleison Tebow, who is back from a 2-year suspension, a guy who's fought upwards of 25 times inside the UFC. And very similar styles, as they both are very offensive-minded wrestlers with heavy grappling is their forte. And sometimes when you get two takedown artists going at it, you get an absolute stand-up war. So not really sure how that fight's going to turn out, but I think it's a very good piece of matchmaking in the lightweight division.
Yeah, and it's kicking off the night too. Curtain jerker, pretty solid. It's a pretty solid fight right there. Good choice.
Yeah, the Tebow returning after being away for so long, I always see that as being interesting again for any fighter, especially Tebow, because Tebow, or is it Tebow? I don't know, man. Tebow. Goddamn pronunciations. But Gleison, easier to say. Gleison, he is a gigantic from, what you hear, from around. I never seen him in person, but what you hear is that he's a gigantic lightweight. It'll be very interesting to see how he adjusts to, USADA, because he didn't adjust well in the beginning because he got suspended for 2 years. So we'll see what kind of body he comes in with. And maybe he's going to come in with the same body and he gets suspended again. Who knows? But we'll see what happens with him. And Islam, yeah, he's only had one loss, and he is a dangerous dude. And he's basically – do you think he's basically a carbon copy of Khabib?
I mean, they have some similar skills, I'd say. They obviously bring that same Sambo style to the table, just kind of just tossing guys left and right. I think very similar. I don't know if Max has anything to throw in, maybe more intricate than what I said.
No, it's similar style. I don't think he's quite as developed yet, but I believe he is a few years younger too. I think he's only 25 or 26. So certainly a guy to watch in the next couple of years.
Yeah, another fight, Dustin Ortiz versus Alessandro Pantoja, which is kind of interesting, even though a lot of people don't care about flyweights. Dustin Ortiz coming off that fastest knockout in flyweight history against Hector Sandoval, right? Dustin Ortiz, he's kind of like, he's not a journeyman, but he's been in the UFC for a long, long time. And he's been, topsy-turvy, to say the least. He's won a few, lost a few. But talking to him over the weekend, Dustin Ortiz, he's saying, like, man, I'm still young. I'm only 29 years old, and now I'm at the best that I can be. So I guess he's saying that this is his prime, even though he's been in the UFC for a few years. And this is the first fight he's going to take that's going to show this. And Pantoja, he's ranked 11 in the rankings, in the UFC rankings. Ortiz is ranked 10th. So they're right next to each other. So winning this fight could bring Dustin Ortiz to another level, as in like getting a fight with a higher ranked dude. Pantoja is the same thing, vice versa, right? If he wins, he'll get another guy like he could probably get a matchup against like a Benavidez or somebody like that, because he hasn't fought those guys yet. Ortiz has fought those guys, so Pantoja's in a better position to elevate himself, I believe, than Ortiz is. Ortiz is kind of like, to stay in the top 10, he has to win this fight. Pantoja could raise himself to the next level with this, right?
Yeah, I would say you're right with that. I think that both guys are at very different points in their experience and their career. Pantoja's a little bit newer to UFC fans. Ortiz is a guy that's been around for a little while, like you said. And I think, with that being said, both guys are also kind of at a similar point in their career. I think both guys are getting better every fight that we see them. It's hard to tell from Ortiz's last fight against Sandoval, just because it was so quick. We didn't really get to see, him work and his rhythm and what he present, his full range of capabilities in that fight. But with that being said, the fight before that he had, I believe it was the fight before that. Maybe there was one in between, but when he fought Zach Makovsky in Canada, I thought that he looked leaps and bounds better than he had, ever looked in the UFC. So, comparing him to a guy like Pantoja, who, he fought Eric Shelton, and then he fought Neil Seery. And I think both of those fights, he just looked like he was getting, he was fighting better competition. He was performing better. So I think this is a really good matchup. It's probably on paper, I think the prelim that's not only the best, but has the most at stake. Flyweight division can always use new faces and new competitors in the top 10. For
sure. Let's go to the main card now. The first one they're kicking off with is Thomas Alameda versus Rob Font. This is an interesting fight because Font is more of a guy that's been around, I believe. And I think he's a little older. Thomas Alameda, he's the young guy who's flashier, maybe has more weapons. I'm not for sure, but more of a stand-up guy. Font, he could go either way. He could stand up. He could go to the ground. I believe that the younger guy, I will go with the younger guy. I will go with Alameda. I think that he has the ability to keep it on the feet and knock out Font, even though a lot of people will probably take Font. What about you guys?
I hate to say it, man, but I agree with you. I think that Rob, he's right from down around the corner pretty much from my house. He's from the town next to me, and he's a guy I've been following for a very long time on the regional scene. I think that he looked like he was improving leaps and bounds. He's a guy that, even though he's been in the UFC for, I don't know, maybe 3 years or almost 3 years, he is a guy that hasn't really fought that much. He's been injured. He's taken some time off, but it's almost helped him. I feel like, he's every fight he's come in with new tools, really looking to prior to his last fight, he really started to put things together. And then he had the fight in Brazil, Pedro Munoz, where I don't know what was going wrong with that. It seemed like, he still had that same confidence. He still was doing the same things, but every single punch that Munoz was throwing was hitting him. Then he got rocked, submitted 3 minutes into the fight, and it was over. So kind of makes me a little bit skeptical, a little bit nervous for him going in against a guy like Almeida, who's got such crisp, crazy technical striking with a lot of power behind it too. So I'm going to go with Almeida. Almeida fared a lot better against Jimmy Rivera than I thought he would in his last fight. Going to go with Almeida, but I think this is, when I look at this card from top to bottom, I think this fight has the most potential to be like a fight of the night, just one of those scraps that gets wild, So I'm really looking forward to this one.
Both of you guys couldn't have said it more perfect. Font, which guy are you going to get? Are you going to get the guy that is very tactical and picks his opponents apart, like he did against, Joey Gomez and Douglas De Silva, or are you going to get the guy that gets a little hesitant, like when he fought John Lineker in Brazil? Same thing with Pedro Munoz. I agree, Nolan. That did not look like the same Rob Font at all. Thomas Almeida, his two hiccups inside the UFC were against Cody Garbrandt and Jimmy Rivera, so been perfect outside of that. So really don't know where he stands against a guy that's kind of right in the same area, the rankings as him, a guy like Rob Font. I will favor Almeida just slightly, but very much potential for fireworks, very much potential for fight of the night. Great main card kickoff fight to kick off the 220 pay-per-view.
What is your prediction? Let's start with Max.
I'm going to go Thomas Almeida by TKO in the second round.
How about you, King?
I have to agree with him. Stole the thoughts out of my brain. Are you gonna agree with us, or are you gonna be the guy that tries to be the hipster over here and tries to be the one in the 2 versus 1 category?
I'm always the hipster, right? but this one, I'm gonna take Alameda, but I think he's gonna shut it down in the first round. I see a flying knee coming in.
Okay.
I see a flying knee.
Mini hipster. We're going the round difference. Okay, I got it.
All right. Now the next 2 fights in the main card, which is the pay-per-view, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't really know these guys. Gianni Villante, I know him, of course, because he's like Chris Weidman's buddy, right? But other than that, like Francomar, Barroso, and that's who Villante's fighting. And then there's Shane Burrows versus Calvin Kattar. Is Shane Burrows and Calvin Kattar, are they from the Contender Series?
No, they were both guys that made their debuts within the last 13 months or so. Burgos honestly has been on a tear. He's 3-0 in the UFC. Put on some really awesome performances. He knocked out Charles Rosa in that streak, and then Kattar came in on the John Jones versus Cormier card as a really short notice replacement, like a 3-1 underdog against Andre Fili, and he dominated him. So kind of 2 guys that kind of just burst onto the featherweight scene, young guys. I think it's a great fight. I just, they don't really have that name recognition yet. I think they're the stars of tomorrow. If this fight was a year from now, there's a good chance that fight would belong in that slot, but it's just not, I completely understand where you're coming from. It's not, these guys aren't, fighters that are very well known. So in that regard, you're correct.
Yeah, I was also honestly surprised to see the Shane Burgos Calvin Kattar fight on the main card. But don't sleep on it though, because like Nolan said, Shane Burgos, he's 3-0 inside the UFC. The knockout of Charles Rosa, the fight of the night against Godofredo Pepe, and then even his UFC debut against Thiago Trator. He's very crisp, very technical with his striking. Trains at Team Tiger Schulman in New York with Jimmy Rivera and Julio Arce as well, who's making his UFC debut. Kattar actually replaced the Korean Superboy Doo Ho Choi against Andre Fili on that UFC 214 card and upset him, shut out Fili 30-27 on all 3 judges' scorecards. So that's going to be a fun one to watch for sure.
Well, now that you guys are starting to explain these guys to me, now they're starting to come into my mind of who these guys are, like Burroughs, like you just said, Tygo Sherman, all this stuff. Now I'm starting to, remember these guys. Kattar, I remember that he did replace this Korean Superboy now, and he did smash Fili, right? Touchy Fili. All right, what do you guys? Who do you got? Since you guys know these guys pretty well, featherweight fight, Burroughs versus Kattar, Max.
Tough fight to call, but I've been highly impressed with Shane Burgos. I'm going to go with Burgos by split decision. I think Kattar is going to be more than game opponent, especially, and I believe, Nolan, correct me if I'm wrong, but he is also from the Northeast, and Boston being his backyard, he's probably going to have a nice home crowd there too. But I'm going to go with Burgos, split decision.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. I'm going to say Burgos, unanimous decision. I think that Kattar's, again, a lot of people are really high on Burgos. I think, he's a guy that I think – people know, while neither one of them are particularly well known, I think more people know Burgos. So there's a lot of people that are counting Kattar out. I wouldn't necessarily go to that extent. Kattar is a guy that has never really fought consistently throughout his career. This is the first actual fight camp he's had in his 21 pro fights. So I expect to see the best version of him that we've seen, but I just can't pick against Shane Burgos. He's so good. He's a guy that's going to be, I believe, one day, contending.
I'm going to go full hipster on this one. I'm going full Korean hipster, right? That's my fight name, Korean hipster. Korean Superboy, Korean zombie, Korean hipster. Yeah, I'm gonna take Qatar. I'm gonna always go with the more experienced guy, right? The one that could grind, and I think that he will grind and grind and grind, and Burgos might be in trouble because of that grinding motion. But who knows what can happen, since he is undefeated, and you guys mentioned that he has been very impressive, but full hipster right now.
All right. Wouldn't expect. That's what the JHK. That's what the H stands for, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Of course, hipster. Now, you're going with that guy, but what is your prediction on the fight? King, what did you say?
Unanimous decision, Shane Burgos.
All right, so you guys see a decision. So I'm going unanimous decision on the other side. Right. And Max is going with the split decision because it's going to be a close fight. So, hey, we got to go either way. We got everything covered today on that fight. Now, let's go to the co-main. Of course, this is going to be, I don't know, man. I'm excited for this fight, really excited for this fight, even though the main event's going to be crazy. But this fight is going to be crazy, too. It's going to be to me, it's going to be like that New York card where they had 3 title fights. But this is going to be better, even though it only has 2 title fights. And it's DC versus Volkan Ozdemir. I'm going to go with Volkan Ozdemir. I'm going to go right out there and just say it. He's going to knock out DC in the first round. People are going to be shitting in their pants. DC's going to be shitting in his pants because he doesn't know where he is. And that's what's going to happen. What do you say, King?
Oh, I can feel the flames coming through my computer from that scorching hot take right there. But I'm going to completely disagree with you. I think DC's going to get it done. I think it's going to be a sub similar to the Rumble Johnson fights where it kind of weathers the storm. Any type of knockout that Volkan would have, I believe, would come earlier. I think Volkan has a better gas tank than Rumble, but that's like saying water's wet. I think that I'm going to go 3rd round submission, Daniel Cormier, and still.
Yeah, it's not to take anything away from what Volkan Ozdemir has done. I mean, he has knocked out Jimmy Manoa and Misha Serkinov, short notice fight against OSP, although he did have the Titan FC light heavyweight championship up for a weekend before. But on paper, to me, it just seems like this is quite a mismatch. I think it's too much too soon for Volkan Ozdemir. DC has seen guys like him before. He's fought guys like Alexander Gustafsson. I mean, he's been in there with John Jones twice. He's been in there with Rumble twice. I don't see this fight going anywhere. I don't see Volkan putting DC in any kind of trouble. And even if he were to score kind of an early knockdown or whatnot, DC's far more experienced. I'm going to go with Cormier. I'm going to go with a TKO. I don't think he's going to snatch up that same submission like Rumble did. I think he's going to just hold Ozdemir down and then pick him apart and continue to pepper shots until whoever's refereeing that title fight swarms in, and I'll say that's going to be the 3rd round.
I believe that DC's going to go into this fight the way that he went into the fight against Gustafsson, overconfident, not training as hard, and believing that he's the best and the only guy that could beat him is the guy that already beat him, which is John Jones. And he's going to take him too lightly, and Ozdemir is going to come in with those hammers and just knock his eye out. He's going to be looking like Michael Bisping on UFC tonight. That's what's going to be happening with to DC. I don't hate on DC. I love DC, man. DC is one of the best champions, but I believe it's Ozdemir's time. Europe's going to have another champion. You know what I mean? I got a secret mole in the AKA camp, and I believe these things because of my mole. I'm not going to tell who it is. It might be real. It might be fake. I'm just saying. I'm just saying shit. But, convention would tell you that DC's going to go in there and do the same exact thing that he did to Rumble Johnson, right? but I believe that Rumble Johnson is helping Ozdemir. Even though Ozdemir says, "Oh, I didn't talk to Rumble Johnson or whatever." Come on, get the fuck out of here,
I
right?
think the
Seriously.
biggest thing is that Luke Rockhold is like one of Volkan Özdemir's like main training partners this camp, or for at least for a solid portion of it. So that's kind of like I feel like it's kind of slipped under the radar in all the storylines here. I don't even know what to think. I'd be interested to hear like from Luke what exactly like he's had to do. You know, if he's been a neutral guy where he doesn't, he's not saying anything to anyone, or if since he spent the whole camp with Özdemir, if he's gonna be, more on his side. So I don't know. That's kind of a whole other aspect that I don't even dare to venture into because I honestly have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of folks that are cross training multiple gyms. I mean, now that Rockhold has been doing his fight camps at Hard Knocks 365 with Henry Hoof too, who knows what the real story is? But it's hard to put a ton of credit or a ton of weight into those kind of side storyline
Speculation
drama kind of things. Yeah.
Well, I got a speculation. Rockhold, Rockhold, he was doing what Alistair Overeem was doing at the Black Zillions. When he would train, he wouldn't be training with all the other guys. He would throw up the curtains in the cage, and you couldn't see what he was doing. And Rockhold, that's what he's been doing over there. And so Ozdemir has not been training with Rockhold. Rockhold has nothing to do with Ozdemir's camp, but they are training at the same time for title fights. So who knows what's the truth? I'm just telling you about, what I heard from my mole in.
You have a mole in Hard Knocks too. Yeah.
Yes, of course. Of course. I have a mole everywhere, There's a mole. I'm telling you, there's moles everywhere. But anyways, so you guys believe, I think Ozdemir, first round knockout. Max is saying DC's going to TKO him. King is saying it's going to be a submission. I love that we all have different things. You know what I mean? Because being the same sucks. Now let's go to the main event. Stipe Miocic, or is it Miocic? Because the guy at the broadcast the other day, he was saying Stipe Miocic, some new guy. I never even seen him on the UFC broadcast before, but he just sprang up on us. Why did they have Jimmy Smith in there, man? Like, come on, you just signed him.
Saturday, he'll be there.
Yeah, so Francis Ngannou, Miocic. Let's talk about Ngannou first because, man, Ngannou, he is the scariest dude, like, in the world, I think. If you're talking about the MMA world, he is the scariest dude to step foot into a cage, I believe. And he's basically took over, like, Rumble Johnson's status in the UFC, right? And do you believe that this is too much, too early for Ngannou?
I don't think so. I think the last fight, like Overeem was the number one contender. So from here, there's nowhere to go but up from there. And that the only person up is Stipe Miocic. And I'm like ride or die with the old guys. Like I'm always the one to pick the vet. I'm always the one to kind of go think that people overrate prospects. And I picked Aldo against Conor McGregor. There's been obviously a handful of them where I've just been wrong, but for some reason, I am so on the Ngannou hype train that's not even funny. Like I'm siding with him in this one. I think Miocic is about as good. Miocic is as good as you can get with the heavyweight, but I just think that power, man, it just takes one. And for you to go, I don't know. I mean, it's a 5-round fight. It's not going to go there either way, but say it was a 2-round fight, for there not to be one of those bombs to land in 10 minutes. Man, I don't see that happening. So unless Stipe can out-bomb him first, which is quite possible. It's heavyweights. I hate picking heavyweight fights. I'm going to go with Francis Ngannou by knockout in the first round.
Yeah, the Stipe Miocic has proven that he is the bona fide UFC heavyweight champion, and he has impressed fight in, fight out, and he's putting together this big-time streak. And I think any other fighter in the division, regardless of its Werdum, if it's Cain Velasquez, whoever comes back, even if Brock Lesnar comes back, I think Stipe Miocic has a good chance to knock out anybody in the division. But for some reason, this Francis Ngannou train has pulled in, and it's it seems like now is the time for him to step up and become that superstar that the UFC has been thirsty for. And this truly is the most hyped UFC heavyweight championship fight in, I think, maybe even promotion history. He is, Francis Ngannou is just this incredible athletic specimen that it really just takes one shot to put him out. And it seems like his focus has turned from um, not just worrying about the power, but making sure that it's very technical. And he's working his footwork and doing things that will make him a more well-rounded martial artist that open up those big strikes. And I think that's exactly what happened with the Overeem fight. And like Nolan said, Overeem was the number one contender. He had beaten everyone else in the division other than Miocic and other than Ngannou. So he definitely deserves this opportunity. And as much as I've enjoyed watching Stipe Miocic develop in the UFC, I believe Francis Ngannou is going to knock him out. I will say second round. I think it's going to be a little bit slower of a start than people think, but sooner or later it's going to clip him. And Miocic is tough, but I don't think any human on the planet can stand that power from Ngannou.
Man, this fight, Miocic, Ngannou, it has a lot of questions, man. Like Miocic, if you look at his last couple of fights, he's been hurt by every single guy. He's been hurt before he knocked them out. He's been hurt. Alistair Overeem knocked him down. Junior Dos Santos beat up that leg, which could have affected him later on in the fight if he did not knock him out. So it kind of shows you that Miocic, he's in a way he's kind of becoming stubborn and not going to what he needs to go to win the fight quickly, which is mixing up the boxing to the takedowns and getting it to the ground and beating the shit out of the dude on the ground, which I think he does the best in the division. And having the UFC kind of cater to Ngannou and like seems like that he's like the UFC wants him to win, and now it's in Miocic's head that the UFC wants Ngannou to win this fight. I don't like it for Miocic because Miocic might come out and not go to the proper game plan that he should have, which is not to stand and bang with Ngannou, which is going to be something that's going to, make his family cry at the end of the night, right? Which is not good at all. It could be scary for Miocic because, man, it's hard to pick because it all depends on which Miocic comes out. It's like
heavyweight fights. I hate picking heavyweight fights. It's just the division is so tricky to begin with. You got old dudes coming in like that resurgence we had a couple of years ago with Frank Mir and like Arlovsky coming out of nowhere and beating everybody. Like, so I don't know, man. It's just so tough. Like it takes one. It takes one. The sport is so different than any other sport in that regard, and it's not evident anywhere more than the heavyweight division.
Yeah, Ngannou, he doesn't move like a heavyweight. He moves kind of, in a way, he kind of moves like Gustafsson, but as a heavyweight. That's the closest I could, I guess, put it. And that's going to be very hard for Miocic to maybe figure out because he's never fought nobody like Ngannou. And Ngannou seems like every fight he comes out, he looks more comfortable on the feet. Even though he probably, even though that power, you don't even have to look comfortable on the feet with the power, but he just looks more comfortable. He sees more of, more angles. His feet are quicker. And Miocic, he's the cream of the crop, all around. But in the middle, in the heavyweight division, like King was saying, it's just like one little inch to the side, and you're gonna be sleeping for the rest of the night, right? And it's scary, man. Miocic. If you, okay, let's go to the future. Since you guys all believe that Ngannou's gonna, destroy this cat.
Who are you taking?
I'm taking Ngannou, man. Come on, man. Like
you guys.
Okay, us.
What's the round?
I think it's gonna be first round. I think it's gonna be first round. I think that Miocic is going to come out and he's going to be stubborn and he's going to sit there and try to stand. And if he does that, it's not going to be good, man, for him. It's just he's going to become like a GIF. like the Alistair Overeem. He's gonna
No.
give. He's gonna just. They should name Ngannou the GIF. The GIF. It should be Francis the GIF Ngannou because he's gonna create GIFs for the rest of his. Or is it GIFs? Is that what it's
Yeah,
called?
you're right, I think.
GIFs, right? Yeah, I think that's his new nickname. They should call him the GIF because he's gonna create GIFs of everybody in the heavyweight division. But yeah, I believe first round. If he wins, who fights him next? Do you think?
Oh, I mean, me personally, it's kind of tough to say this because I believe he's like still one of the best in the world, and he just hasn't necessarily earned the shot yet. But I would love to see Cain Velasquez back in there. I know a lot of people have kind of fallen off his train just because of all the injuries and inconsistency in his in cage appearances. But for me, I still, I have faith in Cain being still one of the best fighters in the world at heavyweight. I would have loved to see him and Stipe go at it. I think that would be about as good of a heavyweight fight as we could have gotten, ever. And you look at his last fight against Travis Brown. He was out forever, fought Travis. He was still improving. He was throwing wheel kicks, things we had never seen before. So I still think even though he's been off this long, he's getting better. I feel like the UFC might, Dana kind of made a comment saying that what has Cain Velasquez done? Where's he been? Why would he earn a title shot? Blah, 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 blah. So maybe they're not as high up on him as I am, and I get it. Hasn't necessarily earned it, but that's who I would select because I just think he's one of the best.
Yeah, I agree with what Nolan said. Kane's one of the best ever, and he makes perfect sense as far as stylistic matchup. But as far as earning an opportunity, his inactivity will hurt him there. And I'd say you give the chance to Verdum, and you see how if Francis Ngannou does able to knock out Stipe Miocic and win the heavyweight title, you face then you throw him real deep into the fire, and you throw him against probably the best jiu-jitsu practitioner in all of mixed martial arts in Fabricio Verdum, and see how he handles a test like that.
And I hate to be this guy to bring this up. This would be something that I don't usually do this type of thing, but do you think the UFC would ever do Brock Lesnar? Do you think that's something they would ever try to do? I just feel like that just screams WME to have the two arguably the scariest physically looking and performing fighters ever to step in the octagon, have them square off. If Lesnar gets that one, he gets done with his 1 year suspension or whatever. I don't know. That's something I'm not going to rule it out just because of the new ownership and everything.
Well, somebody in our staff predictions for bold predictions of 2018, somebody predicted that Brock Lesnar was going to return 4th of July weekend. And that kind of ties into what you just said. Brock Lesnar comes back, fights Ngannou, makes a quick $5 million, because that would be a legit, massive pay-per-view if they could get Ngannou to fight Brock Lesnar. And it would be a clash of styles too, knockout artist versus basically a pure wrestler. But even Brock Lesnar coming back and fighting Stipe Miocic would be fucking great on the 4th of July, right? If Miocic wins, where does he go? Who does he fight? Of course, we just said Brock Lesnar could be a possibility. So you guys think either way, it should be Cain if he does come back, or Verdum? Do you see a Verdum rematch coming up?
I mean, if you're going off of, like Max said, if you're going off of, actually earning the shot, I think that you'd have to go with Verdum at this point. Just have to keep cycling through until a new contender pops up.
And the UFC has talked about that Cain Velasquez-Stipe Miocic matchup for a long time. So if Stipe were able to get the job done and retain the title, that seems like the most intriguing matchup at this time, especially after the way Stipe dispatched of Fabricio Verdum when he won the title.
But you know what? The dark horse is, of course, the dark horse is, Brock Lesnar. But the dark horse is Rumble Johnson coming back at heavyweight and fighting for the title.
I feel like we're going to see that. I really do. So that's not out of the realm of possibilities either. I'm all for it at this point. We need heavyweights. Brock, Rumble, they both bring things to the table. They obviously are very popular fighters, but with that being put aside, I think they're both guys that could, succeed and compete for a title in the UFC in 2018.
Because
Rumors are Rumble's walking around at 100 or 250 pounds right now, so that's definitely not out of the picture. I think that's a very strong possibility for him to make a comeback, and if it were to be a comeback, it'd be at heavyweight.
yeah,
Molly.
the what Ozdemir was saying was that uh Rumble Johnson's not training, but he's lifting, which means if he's lifting, he's bulking up. If he's bulking up, he's gaining weight. Like you said, he's walking around at 250, bulks up 250, comes back July 4th weekend. Because I see that whoever wins this is not going to fight before July 4th weekend. I think the UFC is going to save whoever the winner is, make them do a lot of media or whatever, build up certain kind of fight that they want to have. And July 4th weekend is going to be, on and cracking for whoever the winner is. Yeah, man, it's weird that we talk about guys that are not even in the UFC and not even actively fighting as potential title challengers in the heavyweight division, but that's all we have, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's ridiculous, man. Now, what do you guys see after this? Did we talk about DC? Let's talk about DC, and if he wins, where do you guys see him going to? Did we talk about that?
We didn't talk about that, but I know a lot of people have been talking about, they put Cormier on the same card as Stipe and everything. But to me, it seems like DC's not really interested in that. I know he said it at the press conference, kind of made it really clear. He said something like, do you think I want to get punched in the head by either one of these guys or something like that? So I don't see him necessarily moving up, but I don't know who else he'd fight. I guess Gustafsson would have to be the answer. They had a great first bout, and Gustafsson looked great in his last fight against Glover. So that's the way that I think you're gonna have to go with that matchup next.
Yeah, that really seems to be the one to make sense. Their first fight was extremely close, and the Glover Teixeira win for Gustafsson cemented that he's probably the top light heavyweight outside of the championship fight that's going down this Saturday.
Yeah, it seems like whoever wins this is kind of like the main event. Whoever wins it is going to face a Gustafsson. And I think if Ozdemir wins, if he faces Gustafsson, that's a huge fight in Europe. They have to do it in Europe, right? I don't think they're going to sit there and do it in Las Vegas because Europe would be the best place, right? They could probably sell out a huge stadium. Ozdemir, he's from Poland, right? He's Polish?
He's from Switzerland.
Oh, he's from Switzerland. But isn't he Polish descent?
I'm not sure.
All right, but anyways, if you could go to Sweden and do it in Sweden, I think they could sell out huge because Gustafsson, he's not even a title. He didn't even fight for the title, and they sold out 30,000 in Sweden with Gustafsson as the main event when he got knocked out by Rumble Johnson. That was 30,000. So I think the UFC is pretty interested in doing that. But anyways, I gotta go. Running out of time. Thanks, Max. Let's do it again. King, of course. Let's do it again, and we'll probably do this after. Let's recap UFC 2. We can't do that. So maybe, we could do it again in future. Huh? Because you're going to be at the event, right?
I'll be at the event, yeah, but I'll be around next Sunday. We can do whatever.
All right, for sure, man. Yeah, Max, good talking to you. Nolan, King, good talking to you, man. See you guys.